Welcome to AI After Hours, presented by AZTRA. I'm Sean Fleming, Head of Growth and Revenue, your host. This is our second episode in our series of 10 episodes. This show is about cutting through the noise, finding the signals that actually matter, and turning them into better decisions. Our focus is making decision intelligence real through conversations on planning, forecasting, automation, and business performance. Today's episode is Signals and Noise, Margin Protection at Scale. We're going to be talking about how margin pressure builds across retail environments, which operation levers matter the most, and what better visibility and faster decisions change at the business level. We're fortunate again to be joined by Bob, our VP of Retail and CPG. Bob just had a book come out, right? It's on Amazon now. I know you mentioned it on the last episode. Do you want to have just a quick little update on where that's at?
Yeah, most definitely. So the book came out, Smart Retail. It's physical, it's here now, and we have it on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes and Nobles. And actually, most bookstore can order it if you work directly with your bookstore. They can actually order it for you. But if you want to have it quickly, you can go ahead and go on Amazon, and we have the paperback hardcover and the Kindle available.
That's awesome. Really glad we have an author on the subject matter in the podcast today. We'll be sure to include a link to Bob's book in a description of the episode today. And then again, we have Varun, CEO of Astra. Varun just got back from a trip. You want to tell us a little bit about your trip, Varun?
Well, I went to India. We did a tech venture trip as part of the Kellogg School, School of Management. I always knew India because growing up there, it was, you know, um, I felt I knew India. But walking through this journey with Professor Mohan Besani and the rest of the crew over there, it's different. What we are doing is um, way forward, and they're leaping in terms of technology, and the way they are doing in the startup ecosystem is way forward. And it's not just pertain to one sector. It is that you take it agriculture, you take it defense, you take retail, you take operations. They are using technology everywhere that I can see. And the biggest thing, we went to Indiaspora, which is one of the biggest event that happens in India. We get to see the who's and who's of in India over there. It was an amazing event. My trip kind of I don't know. I can go on and on and about it. Like I was raving about that experience to a lot of people that I came across. I'm gonna do that every year if I get an opportunity with the same school. I'm gonna sign up myself, like out of my pocket and do it.
Sounds like we need to have a special episode just on the trip and everything that's
Oh
going on in
yes,
India. So yeah,
oh
maybe we'll
yes,
set that up.
oh yes, oh yes. Like the biggest takeaway from me in that trip is whatever we are doing right now here at Astra is on the right track. We have a lot of chaos that we go through, and we try to bring in, and we are doing it the right way.
Mm.
You know, that's what keeps me up. That's what I learned there, and that attitude is what, as a founder and as a company, makes us move forward.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit about your trip with us. Harsha, great to have you back. Harsha's our lead AI architect. Harsha, any books or any trips for you over since we had the last episode? I know I haven't
Mm.
done that.
No, no, I haven't done it, Sean. I think mine is the least happening life
No,
here.
you went for a
So,
wedding, Harsha. You had a
yeah,
wedding.
yeah, I went for weddings. Yeah, it's wedding season here, so it's all weddings. So, but I don't want to talk about weddings now. So,
Yeah. So Harsha's been busy keeping his wife happy. That's what Harsha's been up to. All right, cool guys. Well, hey, so again, today's episode is margin protection at scale. Given we have an author and subject matter expert, we're gonna hit him with a question first. So, Bob, when retail leaders talk about margin pressure, uh, how does that work in practice? Like, what are the things like specifically operationally that could break down that really squeeze margin and puts pressure on retailers? And from your perspective, where does it start to happen first in retail? And then, are there different things that businesses should pay attention to, kind of from that lens of the operational breakdowns and where you really start to notice it first.
Now, one of the things that I want to call out is, and contrary to what many people may believe, margin doesn't start when an associate in the store prints out those red tags and to put on the shelf. It really starts back months ahead when a planner relies on a localized on a centralized plan to to create allocation, right? So back then, when you look at it, well, what would happen is you have a specific cluster and you send your item in bulk to every store within the cluster. Now, what happens with that, and this is a subject that I'm actually touching on chapter 4 in the book, is two things will happen. So the first one is what I tend to call a transfer shuffle, and this is when we realize that we sent inventory to the wrong store, and now we are scrambling to move that inventory back from a slow moving location to a high demand location. Ultimately, we end up paying freight and cost and handling twice for just so that we can rectify a allocation mistake that was made before. The second thing that will also happen is what I call a spray and pray promotion. And this is when, just because we once again send this merchandise in the wrong store, we end up issuing a blanket 20% off coupon to every shoppers, thereby also subsidizing purchases that our loyal customers would have made anyway at full price. So ultimately, we are losing the margin again. So paying close attention to those local signals helps us actually avoid this type of mistakes. The second thing that I also want to call out as a big lever when it comes to avoiding this is breaking down the silos between merchandising, pricing, and supply chain. And when you look at it, when these three operates together as one synchronized system, you protect your margin from the very moment your purchase orders are cut all the way to when they leave the shelf.
So chapter 4 to learn more. That's great. No, I think you touched on some of the stuff we mentioned in the last episode as well, right? Where not every store is created equal. They have their own different kind of demand patterns that need to be allocated for intentionally. And I like the comment you made about the downstream effects, where when you get it wrong, you actually incur more cost to get it right, to get it to the place that actually needs it. So no, thank you for that. I think that's a great tee up to our discussion that we're having today. So Harsha, Bob has kind of described the business case. So then how, because ultimately this is a bit of a technology show as well as it is business. How do we then go take those, those different areas, those different systems that work with these things, and how do we, from a technology standpoint, start to make those allocations in a correct way, start to make those adjustments, detect margin earlier before it's, already double dipping when you're reallocating after you misallocated the first time.
Yeah, I think we touched upon it last time as well, Sean. So basically, there are two aspects, right? Obviously, there is inventory planning and then there is forecasting. Um, as Bob said, when you do forecasting, we cannot consider, when a demand planner is doing forecasting, they cannot just consider historical signals to forecast, and they have to model price, promotion. So an integrated forecast is what we have to basically do. But at the end of the day, when we still forecast, we are forecasting at a cluster level or at an aggregate level, and then they generally decompose that to a store to a SKU level and a store level, and then they allocate, correct. The problem with this approach essentially is you treat forecast as a point. So let's say 2 weeks later, or let's say 4 weeks later, I have a forecast of 100 units of SKU A being sold. Becomes a very, very pointed estimate of a forecast. And if I plan my inventory assortment according to this forecast, it obviously there is a risk. So, but forecast at the end of the day is highly uncertain, right? So the point, I think that's where my second point comes, which is basically when you are doing inventory planning, we cannot take forecast as a point forecast. We have to take forecast as a distribution. So let's say, so you can, there are multiple ways of modeling distribution, which I won't get into right now. Like you can take Bayesian like Bayesian models, you can take quantile models and things like that. So essentially, what you do is you model forecasters distribution using probabilistic models, and then instead of relying on one single forecast, you try to simulate multiple scenarios. So hey, what happens if let's say the promotion sells more than what I expected? Hey, what happens when promotion itself increases in the last minute, or things like that? And then basically, against these multiple simulations, you try to see how your inventory is moving, how your basically how your costs are optimized, or how are your service levels basically. And then you try to arrive at a balance of cost and service level, and obviously your inventory, to do the final allocation. So when we do a typical allocation in basically supply chain retail, like majority we just use a formula based approach of allocating inventory. But simulations are something that has like that at least have seen a lot more value, because essentially the demand itself or a forecast itself is not is not a pointed forecast. It's more of a distribution on which you will have to plan. So that, and even if you are basically making a decision on moving an inventory through a store, you at least know what is the trade-off. So what happens if the store doesn't sell as much? You will at least know these type of trade-offs, and what is the probability or what is the uncertainty of that happening is something that you will know upfront, and you can at least make like an informed decision, right? That is something that at least I've seen, that we are all like even AI is progressing towards, and obviously bringing more signals when you are doing modeling, right? Not just looking at your price promotion models, but can you also bring demographics of the population? And now with more data available, some of this data also becomes a little bit easier to model. So bringing demographics, bringing social sentiments, local social sentiments, bringing events, weather, all of this data makes obviously the forecast more and more accurate itself in the first place. But uh, yeah, this is what I would maybe conclude with. So
Oh, that was great. And I just wanted to, maybe you could add some context on a discussion you and I were having earlier this week about how important it is when just developing that initial forecast to filter out noise related to that forecast from events
yeah,
or promotions, so that when you're building a forecast baseline, it isn't taking that into account.
yeah,
I think if you could comment on that, coupled with like some of the more advanced approaches of some of the more LLM focused ways of doing that now, I think that'd be really interesting for our listeners.
yeah. That, so when we do a forecast, generally what happens is I basically like even when you take machine learning way of forecasting or deep learning way of forecasting, we forecast it as a single model. So I basically, it's a single model forecast where you take all the drivers, you dump it into the forecast, and you get an output. But now you have to backtrace and see how much of it is basically coming because of price, how much of it is coming because of promotions, or how much of it is maybe coming because of your marketing events or external factors like weather and all of it, right? Decomposition of this forecast so that you can make some informed decisions, or you can basically model uncertainty is very important. What we generally do to decompose is also like basically build multiple models. So there are methodologies like T-learner methodology, where you take a test and control group, and then you see a test, you apply the promotion on test, you don't apply promotion on the control, and then you see, and then you basically try to model the difference and call it a promotion uplift and things like this. But the fundamental problem with some of these models still remains is basically these models can't very cleanly differentiate between what is a promotion driven lift versus what is a baseline lift. So a simple example could be, every time there is a Black Friday, I there is a holiday that happens, obviously, because then there is an increased demand, and Black Friday happens in November. Let's say there is an increased sale for, let's say, sweaters or winter wear during that time, and you also run promotions on sweaters at the same time, right? Now, if I basically, there are three effects that go hand in hand during Black Friday, and then when you decompose the effects of each of these models, each of these individual effects, if I try to decompose that, becomes very difficult. If I have a single model doing everything, then it will basically do a composite effect. It will not tell me how much is because of promotion price and or how much is because of promotion and how much is just because of Black Friday being there. At the same time, if I build three individual models, each model will try to overestimate its effect. So every model will think that all the sale because came. If I build a seasonal model will just assume that all the sale because came because it's a season. If I build a promotion model will just attribute everything to a promotion, and then basically, and these type of challenges would come. So the challenge here would be you try to build an overall forecast, and then you try to build these individual models, and the trick here is to reconcile. So there are a lot of reconciliation methodologies that you can follow, but none of these are ultimately accuracy. You can get an accuracy at a total forecast level, but each of these individual effects still getting a very good accuracy at this is still a challenge, honestly, because there is no very clean way of separating the effects. But still, by building this comprehensive reconciliation type of a framework, it will solve some of these problems. And when you are building individual models itself, you will have to basically remove the effects upfront so that you build the models on these base effects that you are trying to model. So that's another when you are trying to bring like price and promo models. For example, sales uses something called as a price and promotion model for modeling the impact of promotion. And whenever sales uses price and promotion type of a model, they kind of ignore seasonality in the models because for them it's all about price, elasticity of price. What happens if I increase the price? What happens if I reduce the price and things like that? But this price interacting with the season itself can basically mean a lot more during a certain time than basically than during an off season, let's say. So so when you take individual models, uh, the the trick basically becomes reconciliation, and you have to keep optimizing this reconciliation strategy of how do you basically decompose effects that is forming a total forecast model. And yeah, it's not just about getting the forecast accuracy, but it's also about getting that accuracy of uncertainty, like basically saying how much your effects are contributing to the forecast is basically what I think is most important when you talk about planning.
That was awesome. Thank you. I think that was a masterclass in signals and noise in retail, because we just talked about how all the different signals can work with each other or against each other and
Yeah.
create unnecessary noise as you try to build that baseline and then do each part individually and attribute the correct amount to those different components, whether it's seasonality, events like Black Friday, like you mentioned. So that was great. Thank you, Harsha. So Varun, now to you. So we've heard from Bob. He gave us the business problem of how this happens and what can happen and some of the downstream effects if you spray and pray, or if you over allocate and have to reallocate. Harsha, like I said, gave us a master class on the different signals you should be considering and how all that can roll up into how you actually develop a forecast. The importance of doing simulations to understand the if I do this, then this happens, to make informed decisions. So Varun, to you, now that we've learned how these things kind of happen, what happens as this happens at scale across an entire network of stores, distribution centers, maybe even the suppliers? Because all of this is interrelated, right? If we're
Right.
over allocating, under allocating, and how we're buying things from suppliers, this kind of becomes a problem across the network for a business. So what are retailers doing to really protect their margin at the entire business level? What is visibility that matters the most to an executive to get
Yeah.
a wrangle on this problem?
So I see it from a different lens here. Maybe Bob has spoke from a very very intricate business lens, and Harsha from a very deeper technology expertise and that kind of a lens. I kind of looked at it from a very broader lens. It's being more reactive kind of a decision making than just being proactive. It's not about decision intelligence here. It's more about decision distance, in my opinion. They're miles away from understanding what's happening over there. The ones who are really really protecting their margin are the ones who knows well in advance something is breaking up there. For example, if you have a markdown spike that's hitting in one of your athleisure brand, and you get that spike on a Tuesday, and you have to do an emergency transfer to a store on a Wednesday. That's where you're protecting your margins. You know, it is not about. It is not that they don't have the data. Also, they do have the data. They have more data than anyone can think of. The biggest challenge is how do we connect this data together to make that decision um, uh, intact. Like for example, a demand planner saw the spike, DC manager saw the available inventory, it's like 60 miles away, or the analyst saw the margin exposure in that place. But if this is happening in different time intervals, you will not be able to make the right decision. But if all this happens in a cohesion on in a real time basis, the supply chain head or whoever that is making the executive can make the decision of how do I protect my margins at scale. That's how I see in this lens. And in most of the terms, when we say forecasting or planning, right, it's always about your gut instincts telling you. The math always adds up. You can make the math add up in multiple different ways, but your gut also will say, hey, there is some blind spot that I'm still missing, right? That is being proactive to your business. That is where the executives has to spend more time in that decision making. Connect across these multiple systems to see how that drives the decision making. Especially, if you are dealing about like 1,000 stores and about 50,000 SKUs and three distribution center or four distribution centers, and if these signals are not connected in tandem, you're still working in silos. You might have a brilliant demand planner or a brilliant supply chain analyst or a brilliant, they're vertically integrated. They don't have the horizontal cadence of these things working in unison.
No,
No, that
that's great. Yeah. No, I think, if I could paraphrase a moment, it seems like what you're saying is not only do we not have to be, looking in the past and just reacting, but looking forward, and also the small amounts of error across all the different functions that are working separately add up to
mm-hmm.
more error, which then reduces that margin at scale, like you were describing. So if they were able to interconnect their systems and work across all of them together, then that small amount of error gets spread out across all the systems, as opposed to being a sum of all of its parts. So no, that that
Right,
was
right.
that was great. Thank you, Varun. Anything else you wanted to add on that before we jump into the roundtable?
My other take on that is, how do we bring finance into this picture? We always talk of the bottom line, how is it protecting the margin, right? Or sustainability, which is thing going on in the world right now. How can we add that sustainability feature into this one? It is not just about the executives that worry about that. It's not about just having a dashboard. They have plenty of dashboards. All the executives have plenty of dashboards. How quickly can they make decisions in real time is what it matters, in my opinion. And if you connect not just on the planning and supply chain side, if that connects to the finance and the sustainability factor, and you build that unified view of things, which not in view a decision making uh, system, that is absolutely where they can find a lot of value.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so everyone has the insights, but the hard part becomes actually taking action on those in a meaningful time frame to make an
Right.
impact.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So let's go into the roundtable portion. I thought that was a great kind of intro, and I know we spent a little bit of time there on kind of just getting caught up on where Bob was at with his book and Varun's trip to India. So let's see. For the roundtable today, I'm going to direct it to one person initially, but then everyone else just feel free to hop in if you want to add a point or clarify or offer something from your perspective. So first questions to Bob. From a business and operator perspective, if a retailer wants to improve margin performance quickly, where should they look first? Is it pricing, promotions, inventory, execution discipline? Just curious, like what's the best place to start?
Definitely, that's a Very good question. Now, if you want to stop the bleeding, right, you definitely have to look at inventory allocation and execution first. When you look at pricing and promotion, those are just damage control for a bad inventory decision that was made before, right? So look at it this way: if you send heavy winter coats to a warm climate area, let's say Miami, just because you are still planning in broad regional ABC cluster, you've already lost your margin right there, because ultimately you will have to rely on markdowns to clear that inventory off the shelf. So ultimately, we have to start moving away from that push mentality, a push model, where we send a bulk amount of items to a specific store because they belong to a cluster, and move over to a pull mentality where we are now eating every signal, localized signals that pertain to a specific store. Last time we met, we spoke of this concept of a segments of one. So each store has to be treated uniquely so that we can cater to the store as it needs to, and avoid those little mistakes. And I'm sure Harsha can tell us what of a heavy lift it is to maintain each and every one of those signals. But definitely, we need to hit each and every one of those signals.
Yeah, I just had a comment on that, Bob. I'm curious how, like, the interplay with what you're describing with what I've seen a lot happen more lately too, around how online orders could be fulfilled in a dynamic way
Well,
from stores that may not be utilizing that inventory. So, and maybe there's also a, some type of locational closeness that makes sense from a shipping standpoint to also facilitate that. I'm just curious your take on that as it relates to what you're describing.
And I think Amazon actually does a good job with that, because they have those localized cupboards where they can actually ship their products too. But ultimately, yes, you have to have a good dynamics between your distribution center and your local inventory to actually know exactly where what is, and how to fulfill a response to the client's order in real time based on the need. But ultimately, yes, the localized, and this is another place where the localized signal actually come in, because you can sense the demand based on where the customer is, what they need, and how we can actually allocate for it.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone else comments for Bob or Bob's question before we move on? All right,
Yeah, maybe I'll
I'll go
just
ahead,
add.
Harsha.
Yeah, I'll just add one point. Like I think, like Bob said, I think when you go to localized models, the problem would be accuracy, right? You will take a very big hit in accuracy. Even if you simulate, even if we do everything, you'll still have a lot of uncertainty, and that's where I think we need to move towards multi-echelon way of planning, right? So you should not look at a store as an isolated entity. You should look at a store as a combination of a store. There is a store, there is a network of stores, then there is a distribution center, and distribution center can at least pool some of the risk, if not everything. So you plan. So some of the risk you can pool at the distribution center level. Then you basically the additional incremental risk you can transfer it to the store, and you can maybe optimize in that way, and you try to avoid so this is again like a simulation. Like you can think of like a network of multiple nodes or a graph of nodes, and you can simulate movements of inventory, looking at distribution of demand, distribution of your supply and things like that. You can basically move, you can simulate scenarios, you can simulate thousands, millions of scenarios, and you can try to see what is the most optimal flow in which you have to stock your inventory, where you have to stock, and then how do you balance your trade-offs when you basically stock at that level.
Mhm.
Right? So, uh,
No, that's great. I think it was something I was thinking about when Bob was talking as well, and I'm glad you brought this up. I think, the ability to do that with those systems is really dependent on having good underlying data. And I think one of the most frustrating things for me personally as a consumer of retail stores is going online and seeing there's a product I want, and they say they have this much quantity in stock, and you get there and they're like, oh yeah, we don't have any. There's none in the back. And it's like, oh well, I came because online it said there was some here, right? But I think, being able to not only good interconnected systems, but then trust in those systems and the underlying data and the processes in place at the store level to ensure that whatever is represented in the system as available inventory is current, and whether that's reconciling against a point of sale system to show that what the inventory said it had is no longer because some people bought it that day or something like that. And I think that's kind of a good segue into my next question I'm going to pose to you, Harsha. Maybe you have a different perspective on this than the example I gave, but what are some of the areas where retailers are still giving away margin because systems don't work together? They're too fragmented, they're too disconnected to surface an issue in a reasonable amount of time, right? Like the example I was describing is if point of sale real time feeds aren't connected to inventory system, you run in a scenario where Sean goes to the store and he's upset that he can't get the jeans he thought there was three in stock when there was three other people that day that already bought them.
Yeah. No, I think you and Varun covered most of it, Sean. Like
Yeah.
you gave the more consumer-facing perspective, and Varun gave the internal perspective of how systems, how uncertainties in individual ones can kind of cause a bullwhip, right? So if systems are integrated, at least you will know, let's say, um, so at least you will know that, let's say, if there is a demand spike that has happened in a specific store somewhere, what will be the impact of inventory in your local warehouse or in your upstream warehouse. And by the time, if inventory has already moved out from your upstream warehouse, then you have already lost uh, a chance of fulfilling, right? So this real-time reconciliation will kind of cause a lot of like if it's not there, then it will cause a lot of problems, because then you will keep going upstream for inventory. You won't have here, then you'll go upstream, you will go for upstream more, and then lead times will increase, your cost will increase, and all of that, right? So yeah, I think one thing definitely is that, and second thing is, beyond just connecting the data, can you also, I think one thing we have to also look at is how do we model uncertainties as uh, like how do we model upstream impact of uncertainties, like let's say something happened at a store, what can it lead to in terms of inventory 2 weeks down the line or 3 weeks down the line, is something also we have to be able to model. So this is one level beyond just connecting the data, but just using the connected data to see what will be the impact across the supply chain on something happening at single point. And this is basically causal modeling. We call it causal modeling, right? So if I just think of supply chain as a network, causal modeling of the network is also something that is definitely helpful. But all of this is definitely the foundation is connecting the entire supply chain, so that you know at least the information, you can connect the information uh, throughout.
No, that's great. And I'm just curious, maybe you could comment on this as well. Like when I think about the types of systems in retail that you would be desirable to connect or that you would look to connect, like I'm thinking point of sale, inventory management, maybe a function of sales like you had mentioned earlier, maybe some enterprise resource planning type systems. What about, like, I know you had mentioned external signals like weather, social. What about on the inventory supplied as like on side of as well? Like it seems like a lot of these issues could have impacts on that as well. Where if we're being reactive, like Varun had mentioned earlier, we're doing like rush orders to our suppliers, or if we're having some type of supply chain crisis because of some world event, we're going to have to go to like a backup supplier or an alternate supplier, which could then affect margin as well because we have different pricing with that supplier. So I'm just curious, like, what are the other things people should be considering from a system standpoint as they look at this as like a total picture of how this can impact margin?
That's for me, right, Sean? Or
It could be for you, for Varun, for Bob.
okay,
It just popped in my head as you were talking, so I wanted to share it.
yeah.
Go ahead, Harsha.
No, inventory definitely is one. I would also add suppliers, Sean. Like suppliers is like a very big source that you have to always integrate. Not
Network.
just your tier three suppliers. Like you have obviously for a retailer, let's say an FMCG company is the becomes the supplier that you are concerned about. But you need to obviously map to um, your basically tier two, tier three suppliers, so that you know if something is happening. It's like simple thing, we are seeing something in Strait of Hormuz right now. It won't impact a retailer directly, but it would definitely impact a FMCG company, because it would impact, let's say it would so if an impact in like oil production or oil transportation, it would impact plastic. And if an impact in plastic would basically impact your bottling, your capacity to do bottling, and then that would impact your capacity to package, let's say a cold a soda or something, and then ultimately it would impact the retailer, right? So there is a chain that definitely we are mostly concerned about uh, the last hop of the chain, which is the FMCG company. But obviously there is a bigger chain that's beyond FMCG company, and this is something also it's good to track this. It's not that you have to bring real time data and then create the network, but at least you should be able to see how an impact in a tier 3 supplier could impact a tier 2 supplier, and then impact your FMCG capacity at the end of the day. So
Mhm.
these type of things are also something that you need to kind of look at. I think I was reading, this was during COVID, 5 6 years back. There was, I don't remember the company name. Uh, I think it was an FMCG company. They basically built like a real-time shipping monitoring system just to see where there are shipping disruptions, and basically they try to track it to a commodity level, because obviously they will, even though they're not consuming the commodity directly, they are consuming it through an intermediate vendor who is converting that commodity into a raw material or a packaging material for them, right? So they tried to do this. They didn't really use AI or anything, but they basically built a shipping route analysis engine that basically looks at real-time shipping routes, any disruptions at any shipping route, so that they're at least informed of something that is going to happen 4 weeks down the line. But with at least AI right now, like with the advancements in AI technologies and things like that, you can bring the same causal modeling concept all the way till the retailer level and see if something happening in this shipping route, what can it impact to the what can be the impact to the retailer, and then maybe retailer can take an informed decision saying, instead of relying on this company, maybe I can basically rely on 2 3 suppliers for
Mhm.
this type of material or things like that.
Definitely. And if I may add something, when Harsha was talking about something that came to mind quickly here, within the company itself as well, when systems don't talk, of course, operation would pay the penalty, right? And within the company, when one department or one area of the company doesn't necessarily talk to the other, because most of the time we tend to focus on our line of business and the silo we are in, and that's where some of those issues can come up. I mean, one example that came to mind was, let's say, for instance, in and I'm looking at a home and garden store, for instance, right? They decide this weekend we're gonna issue a buy one get one promotion just to generate more traffic into the store, right? But at the same time, supply chain looks at the data from last month or last week, and they're still saying, based on the slow sales we had last month, we are going to go ahead and reduce replenishment, or the amount of replenishment. Well, what happened at the time is marketing and supply chain didn't really communicate their intention, and ultimately we end up with customers showing up in the store on Saturday morning. They are taking advantage of this buy one get one promotion. By noon, your inventory is depleted, and now you're dealing with frustrated customers who came in hoping to get that promotion, but it's no longer there. And ultimately, now not only that you're dealing with frustrated customer, you're ruining your brand loyalty, but also you're eroding any margin that you were expecting to get from this promotion as well.
Yep. One of the factor that I want to add is, like, most of the legacy systems that you see in the world today, like, one is very good at planning, one is very good at supply chain, one is very good at you know invent like allocations or something. None of them talk to each other. Like,
Mhm.
even though they are the leaders in their own category, they don't talk to each other, and that's a big siloed effect, in my opinion. Like, I mean, like, one of these things, what when we are designing Aurora, right? we thought of, hey, we want to bring everything in together, everything in one single suite of operations, so that they can make right decisions, right from the planning all the way to the allocation.
Mhm.
That's the vision. And if a retailer or FMCG company is not seeing that pipeline end to end, then that's a problem. You know,
Exactly. And you
they,
end up paying the silo penalty, right?
yeah, like, as a planner, you have to make sure that how is it, are we generating the right size curves for the stores or not? If you don't do that, and how does the allocation even works in that case, right? So that is you should have a unified view of those information. Otherwise, like, with AI coming into picture, or with even with ML models and everything in place, you have to ensure that how effectively we can leverage this technology to bring
Mhm.
these together.
Yeah. No, I actually thought of a question for you, Varun, just based on this conversation. So I'm going to put you on the spot in a second, but I wanted to go back to Bob because something he said was really interesting to me, and I think, Bob, you called out an interesting point where, if you offer a promotion without having the right things in place and people, catch wind of it and they're going to take advantage of it, I think there's like a couple of things in our kind of new age of how things work that have maybe added to this phenomenon or made it worse, where let's say there's something all of a sudden on social media that is just like
Mm.
trending, right? And then you have that coupled with people being able to do like drop shipping on Amazon, or doing FBA on Amazon, where they could get wind of this social trend first, and all of a sudden you're having a promo, buy one get one, on something that's like a super hot ticket item, and now they're marking it up and they're selling it either on Amazon or eBay. Like, I remember when and I might be dating myself a little bit here, but I remember when the latest version of the next generation video game consoles came out, you couldn't get a PS5 for list price. You were paying like double the cost on eBay because people would go and get as many as they could, and they would have, they would know exactly when GameStop was going to restock it, and they'd go wait in line. And maybe that's a little different because maybe they have to sell it at a certain price as dictated by Sony as like a retailer of. But I just think like those two things together with like that's kind of what popped in my head was, if you as the person selling the item miss out on the signal, someone's going to punish you for it, and they're gonna
Somebody's
they're
going to
gonna
punch.
they're gonna capture the margin.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that is true. Yes, because when you look at it, we are moving at a high speed, faster than we used before, and being able to sense the margin, or not margin, but being able to sense the signals actually will give you the upper hand or the competitive advantage over your competitor. Now, ultimately, being able to react to it faster than anything, and one thing that came to mind as well. When do I react, right? So the earlier on you react, you have a better chance to capture the market share and the bulk of margin that you were expecting than waiting down the line to do so. So that definitely that is one thing that as retailers they have to really take that into consideration. When do we react and how do we react about it based on all the signals and senses that we're seeing out there.
Right.
And
One
oh,
one more
go ahead,
point.
go ahead, Varun. Yeah.
One more point to that. If you look at any retail ecosystem, right, or any retail leaders, they've been in the industry for so long, in the same company for so long, they know their business in and out, and they know how it can erode the margins or how we can improve the operations. It's just that they do not have the visibility into that. Like, hey, I have to call 5 people to make that decision today, or I have to go through 7 different spreadsheets to make that one single decision. And I wouldn't know until I know where I should be knowing on a Wednesday evening to make a decision for a Friday. I would be knowing that on a next week Monday. No, that is how things are moving. And with right now, like what Bob said, right, we are moving so fast. Like, the other day when we spoke about how are we shrinking the horizons in planning. We went from mid to a long range to came all the way down to a short. Now we are doing intraday and day to day planning as well.
Mhm, mhm.
you know That's how the supply chain is moving so fast. Like if you have a DC closer and if you have your stores mapped out correctly, you can do micro shipping or planned shipping, and so you can be so efficient at it. That way you can create the right brand name and loyalty for for your customers and everything.
And if I can go back to it, right, earlier we spoke about the silo penalty. So this is really because we are moving so fast. The first thing, I mean, earlier in the introduction, one thing that I said is we need to start working as one synchronized system altogether, right? So not only remaining in our silos, but as we work together, we can come up with those decisions faster and react to it as fast as possible. Because ultimately, if you don't, if we are waiting, we're going back to this tic-tac trend, right? So if we are still moving at the speed of a weekly committee meetings, and you have the market is moving at the viral TikTok trend, we are losing money. So we need to be able to have those groups come together as fast as possible and come to a decision to react to what is going on in the market as fast as possible.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point, Bob. And I think to me, the one that I've seen a lot lately, I don't know if it's just the algorithm I'm on, but I've been seeing a lot of pictures and videos of people who I would not expect to be the demographic for Pokemon cards. I'm seeing guys my age with a cart full of every box of Pokemon cards they can get at a store, because that's I guess a big trend right now. And I think, like, to your
Yeah,
point, yeah, like, it's when you aren't able to respond to these things in real time, then it has these interesting downstream effects, and you could think your demographics one, and all of a sudden it's another. I don't know if it's the nostalgia factor or what it is, but that's
where
what
are
I've
you,
been
John?
noticing.
Now,
Whatever.
What are you doing holding Pokemon cards?
I don't have any, no, but I'm seeing.
I would buy them if they are in India for sure.
Yeah,
So
see, there you go. So I think that's an interesting point. And then what I was thinking too earlier too, like, how hard must it be for someone like Sony when they're doing, like, essentially what I think we refer to as a cold start, right? For like a PS5. I'm sure they did a ton of surveys and market research around who their demographic is and about what they can pay, but ultimately they were essentially sold out of everything they could make for almost 2 years. So
Uh,
yeah, that's got to be tough.
it is. See, I'll see it in two different ways. One is, yes, they got sold out. The two is, it is a kind of a marketing strategy also they applied. They kind of created a sense of what do you call, not available, so that they create more curiosity in the buyers.
Yeah, scarcity becomes more
Scarcity.
valuable. Yeah,
Yeah. So that's, I think they took that approach, and it's maybe there might be a lot of other reasons also. They might want to come into the market so quickly and have only limited inventory and all of that. But in my opinion, it was more of trying to create that scarcity pattern, which is what Zara does today. But like, once most retailers understand that game, you cannot create that value for everyone.
yeah.
right.
Right. But to answer your point specifically, yes, they like, let's say if you are doing a cold start off, and if you can create that right inventory balance and right size curves for the new stores that you're trying to open, or for the new product that you're going to launch, that's going to be a big help for any retailer or a FMCG brand. And it's like, one of some of the signals what we spoke, right? Demographic information, or foot traffic mall foot traffic information, or it's not just about looking back on the historical sales and everything on the specific basic, or how is it actually relevant in that present day. Whether that style is gonna match with that current, if it's a fast forward fashion, is it trending on the Instagram or the TikToks of the world or not. You can add all those signals up and see, and do a cold start for these new products or stores that you're gonna launch. And it's a in my opinion, it's a big value for any retailer or FMCG brand.
And so, Varun, I had mentioned I had a comment, or I had a question I was planning to ask you, but then
Sure.
Bob, I think read my mind a little bit, and your comment earlier too kind of led me to want to ask you this question instead. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here, but so when we have, teams that are or tools, teams using tools that are so focused in one area within this
Hmm.
process, I think a lot of times, when someone else reaches across the aisle, so to speak, to try to get help or see how these things could play off each other, I think a lot of times the default answer for some individuals or some teams, depending on how they're managed, is, not my problem. Like, this is my swim lane, this is what I do, this is what I focus on. You're over on that system. They're totally separate. Like, not my problem. You figure it out. I'll figure my thing out. How do leaders or executives like start to help kind of break down those barriers? And is it truly just letting the systems talk to each other, and then the people will naturally talk to each other? Is it culture as well? Like, that's got to be a huge challenge for leaders, I imagine, where it's like trying to
Yeah,
get people to think differently, almost in terms of like, yes, that's your role and your focus, but when we do this together, it helps the business, and that's the ultimate goal, not just the
right.
KPIs you're measured against.
That's absolutely correct. Leaders, like I said, leaders, they know their business so well. That's why they've been in their positions, and they know, they can see that patterns happen day in day out. So they try to bring everything under one umbrella and try to talk to different leaders who are managing that group. Like, for example, in supply chain, you have a merchandising leader, you have a supply chain leader, you have a planning leader, and all of that. And they kind of contract and build that siloed views, whereas leader asks specific questions on, hey, how is this impacting XYZ things? But again, it's more being reactive and not being proactive. you know it's a cultural change that has to come into place. You have to remove that walls of difference between different teams and bring everyone together in terms of business activity. That's one other thing what AI has brought up, like, business teams and IT teams are working in cohesion today. you know uh, like, just like the the entire supply chain of business works at together, the IT teams are also bringing that together. So they understand the ripple effects of what happens when if your shipment got stuck at some location, and how does that impact the merchandising, or how does it impact the inventory, or all of those things. So they understand that ripple effects of each of those things. And now that teams are talking to each other, but it's still being more reactive than being proactive. It's a
Yeah,
cultural
absolutely.
shift. It is a um, mindset change. It is asking the right questions to your teams and having the right people on your team. There are multiple factors to it.
Yeah, I think, something I always come back to, and having been in, selling technology solutions for over a decade now, is you could have the best technology capability to solve a specific problem, but if it doesn't work with the process
Mm.
that they have in place, or it's not adopted by the people, ultimately it's just, it doesn't really make an impact. It's not helpful. I think technology is a capability, but without integrating into the process and having the adoption of the people, it doesn't really help. So I think leaders definitely have a tough job of managing all of that and getting it all to work together. So no, thank you for that perspective. I feel like we're slowly becoming a full-fledged podcast here, guys. We're like getting close to the hour mark, and we're only episode 2. We're finding our stride, but I wanted to ask everyone just kind of like one thing, if you wanted to leave everyone with something today with respect to margin protection at scale, like, what is the biggest thing in your mind you would want people to take away from our discussion today, of whether it's what to focus on, how technology can help, whatever you think is most valuable from the discussion we've had. We'll start with you, Bob, our subject matter expert.
I will definitely go back to what we spoke about earlier, trusting the signals, and I mean, hitting the signals and reacting early on. And for that, we need to get to a point where we can trust the data. And because everything is moving so fast, and you have only the information that is presented to you, and just enough time or X amount of time to react to it. So ultimately, yes, we need to get to a point where the data is reliable. And with that, everybody needs to learn to trust the data.
Awesome. Harsha, one takeaway from today's discussion?
Yeah, I think the one point I made initially, which is basically when you uh, when you go more granular in terms of the way you forecast and when the way you plan, you will obviously introduce a lot of risks. And treating models as distributions, stochastic modeling, and simulations, I think, is very important. And looking at it as a multi-echelon problem, not just as a store level problem, is also something that we need to kind of um, do when we are actually kind of building these integrated models.
And then Varun, we'll leave it with you.
Okay. It is so most people. It's not your competitors are beating you at your prizes or promotions. They're beating in making fast decisions. That's what I would say. Be more proactive than being reactive.
Love it. Straight to the point. So no, thank you guys. This has been a great episode 2, margin protection at scale. We are fortunate enough that we will have Bob for one more episode here as we round out our 3 episodes on retail and CPG. So next time we're going to go a little bit deeper into demand forecasting. We did get quite a bit of that today, so we may have to see if there's maybe something else we want to throw in there as well. We'll have to figure that out and discuss. But no, I thought today's discussion was great. I think Bob, you said it great here at the end with you have to build trust in the data and make sure that you're getting the data in the right way, so then you can do interesting things like what Harsh is describing around causality and modeling and simulation to understand if this then that, which then all rolls up into what Varun's saying, right? Which is your competitors aren't beating you because of price. They're beating you because they're taking action. They're being proactive, not reactive. And when you have the right data in the right place that you can trust, and you have the tools in place where it's connected and your teams are working together, you're running simulations, you understand causality. That's what gives the organizations the confidence to actually go execute and take action, and move quicker and move to that intraday planning. Wow, that would be incredible to get that right from a margin perspective. So thank you everyone for today's discussion. It's been awesome. Hope you will join us next week for our last episode on retail. And thank you everyone for listening. This has been AI After Hours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.